For months, 3I/ATLAS was just another fast-moving comet in the sky, a harmless visitor, or so we thought. But new data is changing everything. Its path isn't random. It's precise, controlled, almost deliberate. Scientists are now considering a chilling possibility. It could be targeting Mars. Even stranger, patterns in its gas emissions hint at intelligence, not chaos. Stay tuned as we uncover what this mysterious object could mean for the red planet and for us. When 3I/ATLAS was first seen on July 1st, it looked like any other interstellar visitor. A fast-moving blur with a glowing coma travelling at unprecedented speeds for an inbound object, nearly 87 kilometers per second relative to the Sun. At that speed, it covers the Earth-Moon distance in less than 80 minutes. But what stunned researchers wasn't just the velocity, it was how it acted. Comets normally slow down, break apart, or stabilize as they approach the inner solar system. But 3I/ATLAS began to accelerate, slightly but steadily. Even stranger, its trajectory began tightening. Small course adjustments became visible, and its coma, the glowing halo of gas and dust, doubled in brightness within weeks. Spectral readings picked up intense spikes of ultraviolet energy and CO2 outgassing at levels never seen in a comet before. It was behaving not like a drifting lump of ice, but more like a guided projectile. And that's when Webb's deep field instruments detected something that changed everything. Rhythmic pulses coming from the tail. Not random jets from sunlight heating ice, but deliberate bursts in perfect 17-minute intervals. A pattern, a signal, a maneuver. As Webb, Gemini South, and NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory kept tracking the object, the numbers started to tell a disturbing story. What had been predicted as a near miss was no longer just a near miss. The revised closest approach was now 1.95 million kilometers from Mars, tiny on a cosmic scale. And even more alarming, simulations showed that a mere 10 kilometers per second increase in speed, a fraction of what those gas pulses already deliver, could nudge it into a direct collision. Think about that. Just a whisper of thrust, and Mars becomes the bullseye. This kind of control is unheard of for natural bodies. It's as if 3I/ATLAS is using its own outgassing like micro-thrusters, adjusting its path the way a spacecraft would. Even worse, those thrusts line up perfectly with Mars's orbital plane. Scientists are no longer just tracking an object, they're watching it aim. And the window for impact keeps narrowing. Between September 19th and 30th, any single burst could be the push that changes everything. It's not just amateurs or sci-fi fans raising alarms anymore. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb and his team have published a paper suggesting something bold. 3I/ATLAS might be an engineered probe, and the data supports them. Radar pings from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and Goldstone antennas return metallic echoes, not the soft, watery reflections typical of comets. Inside sources at NASA describe these radar returns as unlike anything we've seen. Add to that the green, needle-like streams captured in amateur long-exposure photos. 3 glowing beams converging on Mars, pulsing in sync with the exhaust vents, and the picture becomes harder to dismiss. Loeb has floated the scenario that 3I/ATLAS could be deliberately targeting Mars, either to crash or to deliver something. Probes, signals, spores, whatever it is, it doesn't look accidental. Mars is being approached with surgical precision. And humanity is just sitting here watching an operation we barely comprehend unfold in real time. What if it actually hits? The answer is staggering. With an estimated mass of 10 billion tons and a speed of 57 kilometers per second relative to Mars, an impact would release more than 2 million megatons of energy. That's thousands of times the yield of the largest nuclear detonation in Earth's history. The crater would measure about 60 kilometers across and 5 kilometers deep, scattering debris throughout Mars's orbit, some of which could be thrown into interplanetary space. And yes, that means some of it could eventually reach Earth. But the consequences go far beyond rocks and dust. Mars hosts dozens of scientific assets: rovers, orbiters, life detection experiments, and decades of climate records. An impact wouldn't just destroy hardware. It would erase decades of research, knock out communication arrays, and possibly trigger contamination events we're not prepared for. ESA, Roscosmos, CNSA, and JAXA have all begun planetary defense talks, not about an alien armada, but about a single object, acting just a little too much like a spacecraft. For decades, scientists have speculated that Mars once supported life and may still shelter it deep underground. Subsurface lakes, dormant microbes, ancient ecosystems locked in permafrost. That's why so many missions have targeted the planet. But if 3I/ATLAS strikes, all of that becomes a biological question mark. The heat of impact wouldn't just vaporize the surface. It could break open deep layers of Martian crust, exposing reservoirs we've never touched. And if 3I/ATLAS carries organic material, or worse, synthetic biology embedded in its exhaust trails, the collision of Earth-independent evolution with Martian biology could trigger genetic contamination on a planetary scale. Some biologists call this panspermia in reverse. Not life spreading from Mars to Earth, but life being seeded into Mars on purpose. It raises an unsettling question. What if destruction isn't the point? What if this object is a delivery system and Mars is the incubator? As 3I/ATLAS closed in on its nearest approach to Mars, the James Webb Space Telescope locked onto it for one final ultra-deep scan. The findings were held under classification for 48 hours before a portion was released publicly. But leaks from within the Webb project suggest a much darker story. Its NIRSPEC and MIRI instruments detected traces of synthetic polymers, molecules resembling Earth-made plastics and carbon nanotubes mixed with natural gases. These are not structures that form in a vacuum or through cometary heating. These are engineered materials. Webb spectrographs also recorded persistent isotopic irregularities, especially in carbon and hydrogen, unlike any known object in the solar system. In short, 3I/ATLAS carries materials that should not exist in space, and it's headed directly toward a planet that may still harbour life. Webb's data was quietly shared with major space agencies. Emergency task forces were assembled, not to stop it, but to understand it before time ran out. As panic began to spread, NASA made an unusual decision: silence. The routine press updates stopped. Telemetry from Perseverance and Tianwen, one showed unexplained gaps. Questions about possible impact scenarios were deflected. Something had shifted. Then a classified transmission, later leaked by an internal whistleblower, contained one phrase: Impact Protocol initiated. What does that mean? Nobody knows for certain, but insiders claim a series of encrypted signals were sent from Earth-based stations to every active piece of equipment on Mars. Curious, considering there's no known way to deflect or intercept 3I/ATLAS. Unless, of course, the purpose of those signals wasn't to protect Mars, but to prepare it. If 3I/ATLAS is some form of intelligent or semi-autonomous system, it could be reacting to energy signatures, orbital beacons, or encoded pulses. And if Earth just activated those systems, we may have confirmed that we're listening. At the SETI Institute, a team of cryptographers tried something no one else had. They took the object's current trajectory, time of closest approach, velocity, and gravitational vectors, data known to every astronomer. and converted it into binary. Then they ran it through the same compression algorithms used for deep space communication. What emerged wasn't random data. It showed structure and repetition. Inside were numerical intervals, corresponding to atomic numbers: 6, 8, 14, 26, carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, the building blocks of life and machines. Interspersed among them were prime number countdowns and spacings consistent with recursive messaging protocols. In other words, the entire flight path of 3I/ATLAS could be a signal in motion, a message sent not by radio but through movement, timing and presence. This would mean we aren't just watching a trajectory toward Mars. We're witnessing an act of communication. The impact window itself could be part of the message. If it strikes, that's one statement. If it misses, that's another. Either way, the answer is already written in the sky. As the predicted impact path narrowed, planetary scientists noticed a chilling coincidence. 3I/ATLAS's updated trajectory cut across a narrow corridor passing directly above Elysium Planitia, a geologically young region on Mars, known for its symmetrical surface features. Satellite imagery showed concentric ridges, spiral-like flows, and formations resembling Fibonacci patterns. These features weren't new, but what caught attention was that the exact descent vector of 3I/ATLAS lined up with the central depression, a perfectly circular basin just under 3.5 kilometers wide. It had no known impact origin, no volcanic residue. Yet, at its center lay a deposit of crystalline silicates with refractive properties found nowhere else on Mars. When exposed to sunlight, they emit brief infrared pulses at regular intervals. Most dismiss this as a geological oddity. But now, scientists are asking, is this basin a random feature, or a beacon, a rendezvous point? And if so, who placed the coordinates? Just as James Webb reacquired 3I/ATLAS from an alternate tracking point, an unexpected anomaly appeared. Behind the main object, not physically attached but trailing at a constant 0.07 astronomical units, was a secondary shadow. It wasn't debris. It wasn't gas. It was something darker. Radar couldn't see it. Infrared couldn't heat it. But photometric analysis revealed a sharp drop in light that moved perfectly in sync with 3I/ATLAS, as if tethered by an invisible force. The shadow maintained an exact distance, unaffected by gravity or acceleration. When mapped in polar coordinates, it formed a perfect orbital trace. Something was following 3I/ATLAS, not escorting, not herding, but mirroring. Speculation erupted. Was it a second object? A drone? A gravitational echo? Or something else entirely? A field? A memory? A protocol? For the first time, researchers began to consider that 3I/ATLAS may not be the main actor in this event, but the carrier of something more elusive. With all eyes fixed on the projected impact date, an even more unsettling pattern emerged. When scientists charted 3I/ATLAS's trajectory and its closest approaches to the Sun, Earth and Mars, they found each line occurred on astronomical resonance dates, orbital harmonics studied by ancient civilizations, September 23rd, October 5th, November 11th. And these dates align not just with seasonal equinoxes and transits, but with rare gravitational synchronizations that recur every 54 years. The last time the inner planets were in such positions during a comet passage was the Tunguska event of 1908. This synchronicity sent shockwaves through the scientific community. How could a random interstellar object arrive at such precisely significant moments? Unless it wasn't random. Unless it was timing itself. Following a clock built by something other than humans. This wasn't mere coincidence. It was a pattern. And patterns in space are always the signature of design. One final revelation shifted the discussion into territory once thought off limits in mainstream science. Consciousness in motion. A neurocosmology group at Princeton, studying neural synchronization patterns under deep meditative states, observed something extraordinary. When participants were exposed to the pulsating frequencies emitted by three I/AT LAS's light curve, especially the 17-minute gas vent intervals, their brainwave activity synchronized not just in one person, but across several individuals in separate, isolated rooms who had no knowledge of each other. This wasn't simple resonance. This was neurological entrainment. It was as if the signal wasn't only mechanical, but also cognitive. And if it can affect humans from millions of kilometers away, what does that reveal about its source? Could it be that 3I/ATLAS is not a rock or a spacecraft, but a thought moving through space like a seed of awareness? A message not read but felt. Something that activates on contact. Something that becomes part of you the moment you understand it. If that is the case, then the event on Mars, physical or not, might just be a symptom. The real occurrence could already be taking place inside us. As fears of a potential impact spread, a quiet network of archaeoastronomers began comparing 3E/ATLAS's trajectory to ancient star charts, not only from Western records, but also from Babylonian, Mayan, and Tibetan cosmological scrolls. What they uncovered challenged belief. Across cultures, a pattern known as the flame serpent appeared again and again, describing a celestial body descending from the outer dark, bending unnaturally near the sun, and heading toward the red god, Mars. The pattern repeated in steely carvings and even in cave drawings, all showing the same sinuous path. One artifact stood out, a pre-Incan calendar stone from Tiahuanaco, displaying 4 radiating lines from Mars after the comet's descent. When processed using photogrammetry, these lines matched Webb's projected debris dispersion pattern in the event of a Martian impact. What does that imply? That someone may have seen this coming not in this century, but thousands of years ago. It suggests that 3I/ATLAS is not just moving through history. It may be history itself, repeating. And Mars may not be the target. It could be the trigger. Then something completely unexpected occurred. The ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, quiet for days due to power conservation, detected a surge in xenon isotopes high in Mars's atmosphere. Initially, scientists assumed solar radiation was responsible. But the mix was all wrong. This wasn't being added from above. It was coming from below. More precisely, from deep fissures near Cerberus Fossae, one of Mars's most geologically unstable zones. Seismic readings spiked. Subsurface temperatures rose by 3 degrees Kelvin. And in a development that left researchers speechless, magnetometers detected a faint but structured magnetic pulse repeating every 17 minutes. The same in one way to volare, answered as 3I/ATLAS's gas emissions. The question was no longer if the object would hit Mars, and it became whether the planet was already responding to it, as if Mars wasn't under threat but was being activated. Something inside its crust, dormant for millennia, had just begun to stir. With each passing hour, the idea of impact began to feel less like a physical collision and more like a temporal event. The Webb team noticed that light fluctuations from 3I/ATLAS no longer matched a comet's normal spin. Instead, they followed a layered timing pattern. 7 pulses, pause, 3 pulses, pause, 13 pulses, and so on. These numbers weren't random. When graphed, they formed a Fibonacci-based spiral, a pattern often tied to organic growth, memory encoding, and even the coiling of human DNA. Mathematicians and cryptographers teamed up to decode it and arrived at a troubling theory. 3I/ATLAS was transmitting time, not in seconds or hours, but in cycles. in epochs. The object wasn't just arriving, it was synchronizing. The countdown wasn't leading to an impact, it was leading to resonance. A merging of energy, orbit, and consciousness. And when the countdown ended, the outcome might not be an explosion but a shift. Perhaps a shift in perception, or even in the very structure of reality itself. In the final 72 hours before the predicted impact, a new signal was detected. Low frequency, infrasonic, inaudible to humans, but unmistakable in its waveform. It wasn't coming from space. It wasn't reflecting off Mars. It was emerging from beneath Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system. This region, long assumed geologically inactive, suddenly emitted a structured harmonic frequency picked up independently by orbiters from ESA, CNSA, and NASA. The signal matched no known natural process. When isolated and visualized as a spectrogram, it revealed a spiral, a mirror of the same waveform emitted by 3I/ATLAS during its closest approach to the Sun. The research community went silent. What does it mean when a planet answers an object before it even arrives? Is Olympus Mons simply echoing, or is it speaking? Has Mars been waiting for this exact moment? And if this is Mars waking up, what happens when it fully opens its eyes? As the final hours ran down, another discovery emerged from an overlooked dataset, an old thermal scan from the Mars Odyssey orbiter nearly 2 decades ago. It had shown a faint heat signature under Utopia Planitia, dismissed at the time as solar reflection noise. But when the same region was rescanned during the 3I/ATLAS approach, the heat pattern had not only reappeared but expanded, now matching the shape of an ancient glyph etched into the walls of the D and M fossae. The glyph, barely visible to the human eye, depicted a descending spiral striking a circle with 2 planetary spheres aligned at the moment of contact. The implications were immense. Mars might hold a memory, not only of geology, but of an encoded celestial past. What if Mars isn't just a planet? What if it's a recording device and 3I/ATLAS is the playback key? Then the impossible happened. High-resolution images from ESA's Mars Express captured movement in the dust fields south of Noctis Labyrinthus. It wasn't wind, it wasn't rover activity. It was something rising, a pattern forming in the sand, 2 perfect concentric ovals expanding outward as if carved from below. Over 4 hours, the shapes stretched and shifted until they created a clear image. An eye tilted exactly 23.5 degrees, Earth's axial tilt. The symbolism was overwhelming, an eye watching us, or a mirror reflecting us back to ourselves. Scientists scrambled for explanations, but none came. Mars had just blinked. Not metaphorically, not poetically. Physically, deliberately. Something beneath the surface was not only aware, but aware of us, of our geometry, of our orientation, and most disturbingly, of our signal. As though this entire event had been foreseen, maybe even called for, long before humans ever existed. Just before the signal blackout, the James Webb Space Telescope captured one of its last readings, a spectral breakdown of the molecular trail left by 3I/ATLAS. Within the volatile organics and carbon chains, something appeared that stunned every astrobiology lab on Earth. It was a repeating nuclear-based strand, eerily similar to RNA. Not identical, not Earth origin, but clearly structured for replication. A foreign form of prebiotic information hidden in vapor drifting through space. As scientists started mapping it, a chilling realization took shape. This wasn't just biological, it was reactive. Parts of the strand reflected human-designed encryption keys. Other portions mirrored known musical intervals, as if the molecule itself had been created to communicate with intelligence, to respond when interpreted. This was no ordinary comet dust. It was a living code, engineered not to survive the void, but to transmit across it. As 3I/ATLAS entered its final trajectory, the global astronomy network detected one last alignment. Mars, Earth and the Sun would soon form a perfect straight line, with 3I/ATLAS crossing that axis at the exact moment of solar transit. This was no simple orbital chance. The projection matched ancient megalithic alignments on Earth: Stonehenge, Nabta Playa, Teotihuacan, all pointing to the same triad of celestial angles. For thousands of years, humans had unknowingly built monuments echoing this very configuration. Now the pattern was repeating, not as legend, but as mechanism. Mars, the red witness; Earth, the conscious observer; the Sun, the unending source; and 3I/ATLAS, not a mere object, not a rock, but a keystone sliding into the lock of planetary memory. This final position isn't about destruction. It's about completion. And once it aligns, something will shift. Not out there, but within us. We thought we were tracking a comet, a rogue fragment from some forgotten region of the galaxy. We named it 3I/ATLAS. We calculated its numbers. We mapped its arc. We told ourselves it was random. But the James Webb Telescope revealed something else. This wasn't randomness. It was ritual. This object didn't just arrive, it acted. It aligned. It responded. And as it moved across the solar system, every planet it passed seemed to whisper back signals, pulses, alignments, codes. Mars didn't merely react. It remembered, as if this wasn't its first meeting, as if this moment had been scripted into the planets themselves, etched into craters, written into the pulse of gravity. And now, with one final move, 3I/ATLAS has taken position, not to destroy, but to complete something. The world's attention, once distracted by terrestrial conflicts and the hum of daily life, suddenly pivoted skyward. Telescopes and observatories from every continent redirected their gaze. Amateur astronomers reported subtle, almost imperceptible variations in light, flickers that matched Webb's timing sequences down to the second. Social media lit up with blurred images of 3I/ATLAS, but no photograph could truly capture what was happening. It wasn't just a rock moving through space. It was a process, a signal, an event stretching across dimensions of time, biology, and perception simultaneously. Meanwhile, deep space probes near Mars transmitted streams of data that began to challenge fundamental assumptions. Atmospheric sensors recorded waves of energy that did not behave according to any known physics. Xenon spikes continued, followed by subtle bursts of neon, argon, and even rarer isotopes that hinted at processes beneath the Martian crust far more complex than tectonics or volcanism alone. Geologists argued, debated, and recalculated in real time. Some suggested that the energy readings resembled biological rhythms, oscillations found in neural networks, not molten rock. Could Mars itself be thinking, or at least reacting in a pattern that mimicked thought? On Earth, neuroscientists scrambled to compare the 3I/ATLAS pulses with human brain activity. Meditation labs and isolation tanks recorded participants whose neural firing synchronized with signals from space, echoing the Princeton study. Across continents, volunteers reported similar phenomena: vivid awareness, sudden clarity, a deep sense of presence as though their minds were being tuned to something vast and deliberate. No one could explain it. And yet, it was undeniable. A subtle awakening, triggered by an object light years away. Meanwhile, the countdown accelerated. Each cycle of pulses grew more pronounced, the Fibonacci spirals from the Webb data aligning ever closer to resonance with Martian magnetics. The signals formed a layered multidimensional pattern, waves interacting with waves, a cascading structure linking Mars, the comet, and Earth itself. Mathematicians confirmed what the astronomers had feared. The pattern wasn't linear. It was recursive, fractal. Every repetition amplified the effect. Every pulse brought the planets, the object, and consciousness closer to a synchronized moment. In the final 48 hours, ground teams noted another anomaly. Mars's thin atmosphere began radiating in infrared wavelengths previously unseen. Images of Olympus Mons revealed what looked like liquid movement beneath the surface, following the same rhythm as the infrasonic pulses. Satellites detected a faint glow emanating from the fissures in Cerberus Fossae, almost like bioluminescence, except there was no known life capable of producing it. The signals hinted at something vast and ordered, a mechanism older than human civilization, waiting for the final alignment. Then, just as the last Earth-based calculations were being confirmed, the signals from 3I/ATLAS shifted. The pulses slowed, stretched, and intensified in a pattern impossible to predict. Across the globe, instruments went haywire. Computers flagged the readings as anomalies, but no anomaly in history had ever matched this. The spiral, the Fibonacci sequence, the resonance, it all intensified into a single coherent wave form. Consciousness, matter, and energy seemed to merge in that signal. Mars, 3I/ATLAS, and Earth were no longer separate. They were one event unfolding across space, time, and mind. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.